Hey y'all, welcome to Back Porch Cooking and Reminiscing. We're the Morgans, and as always, we're happy y'all are here with us today. Now, today it's raining outside and thundering, and so we're not going to be able to do any cooking. So I thought, well, we'll do some reminiscing. And what we're going to reminisce about today is some of my wild and crazy days when I was a teenager that I raced motocross. And it was some pretty fun times. So I picked out a few things that I think you'll enjoy hearing about things that we did when we were out racing. So before we get started, if y'all would just remember, if you haven't already, need you to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. That way we can continue to grow the channel and you'll get notifications when we put new videos up. All right, so now we got that part out of the way. Let's get into some things that happened back in my younger days. So one of the first things was that a good friend of mine is actually who started out with racing motocross before I ever got into it. And so we'd go to the track on Sundays and be there pretty much all day long. And his dad used to always go to the track with us. Now, his dad was just one of these guys that he was always trying to get something over on anybody that he could. So, one of the things that he loved to do was to sneak up behind you, pinch you on the back of the leg, and make this kind of a duck sound when he did it. So, one day we're there at the track and I'm standing there talking to somebody. He sneaks up behind me, pinches me on the back of the leg, and makes his duck sound. Well, I had a glass of ice water in my hand. When he did it, first thing I did was I threw that ice water all over the person that was standing in front of me. Now, I don't remember who that person was, but if by chance you're watching this and you remember this happening, I do apologize. So I thought, well, I'm going to be in a fight over this, and my friend's dad, he's standing over there. He's just almost down on his knees laughing at the fact that I'd thrown this ice water on this person. But that's just how he was. He was the type that, he didn't care what happened to you as long as he got to get a good joke in on you. So as I say, a lot of times we'd go to the track, we'd be there all day long. And one of the other memories that I have about going to the track to watch my friend race is he had a van, and we'd go in that van. We'd sit there, and he wasn't racing or somebody that we knew wasn't racing, then we'd go sit in the van and turn the air conditioning on. So and this was just kind of a hangout for everybody to get in that van and sit there and be under the air conditioning. So this one particular day, we were all in the van, and I was drinking a sun drop. And I had set the sun drop on the console up in the front in a cup holder. It was a canned sun drop. Now, back in those days, just about everybody liked to chew chewing tobacco. So at some point, we get out of the van, maybe go down and watch another race or something, and we come back. And my sun drop's still sitting right there in the cup holder where I'd left it. So I grab up my sun drop, go to take me a big drink of it. Well, guess what? Somebody, while I was gone, decided to use that as a spit cup. So not only did I get a good drink of sun drop, but I got a good drink of tobacco spit as well. That is one memory I will always have of our days going to the racetrack. Now, after that, I actually got into the racing myself. This was back in the probably, I'm going to say, mid 70s, maybe toward the late 70s, that I actually started racing myself. But when I got started, we'd go to several different tracks in different areas. long as it weren't more than maybe a couple hours drive from where we lived at. And one of them that we would go to was up in Columbia, Tennessee. There was usually a van load of us that would go to that racetrack to race and or just to watch. Everybody's dad or brother or sister or just whoever. But one of the funny things was when we would get to the track. Now you had to pull up to a gate, and they would check to see how many people you had in the vehicle, and then you had to pay a fee to get in the gate fee. And that fee, I think back then was maybe $2 or $3, something like that. Wasn't very much, but the guy that would always drive the van with the motorcycle trailer behind it to the racetrack, he would always make us younger ones get back in the very back of the van and hide underneath blankets, pillows, and everything. So it didn't look like that there was, you know, 8 or 10 of us in that van. It only looked like there was maybe 3 or 4 people in the van. But the strange thing about that was that we always still had to pay him the gate fee, even though he didn't have to pay it on us, but we had to pay him. I guess that was kind of make up for gas money to get us to the track and everything. So usually at that particular track, after we would get through racing that evening, we'd usually stop at a Shoney's that was just not too far from the track. We'd go in and eat, and as I said, there was usually always 6, 7, 8 of us at one time when we went in. We'd get a big table, and everybody place their orders and everything. So this one friend of mine, he was always, into trying to play a trick on somebody. He's a younger kid at the time. I think we were maybe 14, 15 years old. So we sat down there, and waitress comes out and she brings us waters and cokes and teas, whatever that everybody wanted. And so we're sitting there, and she comes back to the food or to the table with the food, and my buddy, he says, "Excuse me, miss, there's a fly in this ice cube in my drink." And she's just goes, totally apologetic and everything about it. And she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me get you a new drink." And she said, "And your meal tonight will be on the house." Well, as she starts to pick the glass up, my buddy, he goes, "Oh, wait a minute. Let me get my ice cube out." He pulls his ice cube out. It was a fake ice cube with a fly in it. So that was a pretty funny story, but there's even one even better. We had this guy that he was a delivery man, and he was motorcycle mechanic for pretty much most of us. If something tore up on the bikes during the race, he'd get it fixed for us and get us back out there again. So we were at that same Shoney's. May have even been the same night. I don't really remember, but it could have been. We were at that Shoney's, and the waitresses brought all their food, and everybody's ate. And so after we eat, this guy, he pulls out food stamps. Back in the day, food stamps came in a little booklet in different denominations. There was maybe $1, $5, $10, and you just tore out that food stamp and paid for your groceries at the store. Well, this guy being a delivery man, he had access to the food stamps because back then you could actually pay for your deliveries with food stamps that people had give you at the grocery store. So he's got them in his shirt pocket, and he pulls them out. And he says, "Ma'am," he says, "y'all do take food stamps for this food, don't you?" And she's like, "No, sir, we don't take food stamps for this food." He says, "Well," he said, "we've got a problem then because it's all the money that we've got. We don't have any cash money or credit cards or anything. Only thing we've got is these food stamps that we can pay with." She says, "Just a minute, I'll have to get the manager." So she walks away from the table, and here in a minute, here comes her back with a manager. Well, I don't know how he did it, but somehow or another, he let this manager know that, he was just aggravating this waitress. And so he says, yeah, he said, this is the only money we've got. We don't have any more money to pay for this food except these food stamps. That manager says, looks at the waitress and he says, well, I'll tell you what. He said, if these people don't pay for this food, it's coming out of your check. And he just turns around and walks away. Of course, this waitress is about ready to go ballistic on him and us too, because she don't want to have to pay for that. Probably back in those days, 7 or 8 of us eating, I'd say it was probably a $60, $70 bill, which was a lot of money back then. And so finally, he says, "Oh, hon, I'm just kidding you." He says, "We're not going to pay for our food with food stamps." And you could just see a look of relief come over her face when she heard him say that. And so when we left there, we all pooled our cash together and left her a pretty good tip. I think we wound up probably tipping her about $25 on that $60 bill. So, like I say, back in those days, that's pretty good money. But we were always having some kind of fun at the expense of other people a lot of times, but we did always have fun there. So another funny story, as I said before, there was always a bunch of us went to the races together, and there was always at least 4 or 5 people that actually were racing. That we'd have a kind of a convoy going to a racetrack. So one night we were there at this particular track. They ran a night track. And one of the guys that was with us, he was racing. Don't remember what class he was in, but I guess he had cut somebody off and maybe caused them to crash. So when the race was over, he'd come back into the pits and got off his motorcycle and started to take his helmet and stuff off. And these two guys come walking up pretty quick, walked up to him and, started giving him a problem about that he had cut him off and caused him to crash. Well, one of the other guys that was with us, he's standing pretty close and he's got a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other. He runs over there to where these two guys are at, slings that beer down on the ground, throws his cigarette down on the ground, gets in their face and tell them, if you want to make something out of this, you just come on. We'll take you on. Where we come from, we don't put up with stuff like this. Of course, he was using a lot of language that I'm not going to use, but he let them know real quick that he was ready to go any minute that they were. Well, it didn't take them but just a second for them to decide that maybe things weren't as bad as they thought they were. So they started backing down and saying, hey, well, I just wanted to say, you need to try to be a little more careful when you're out there and not cut people off. And the guy that had thrown his beer and cigarette down, he says, we'll do whatever we want to do, and you just remember where we're from. And so that was a pretty hectic night. Thought again we were going to get in a fight. That seemed to happen a lot when we would go other places and race, but that was a pretty good one. Same guy with the beard and the cigarette. Same guy that was riding that night. This was another night. He had crashed, and so he came into the pits and he said, "Oh man, my ribs are killing me. I think I may have broke one or two." So our friend that was one of the pit guys for us, he says, "Well, okay." He says, "Here, so you take a deep breath, and I'm gonna tape your ribs up." So the other guy, he takes a good deep breath, and next thing we know, he's going around and around and around his ribs with duct tape, gray duct tape. Of course, I guess maybe that may have helped hold his ribs in place, but to hear from his wife later, it took them weeks to get all that duct tape off of him. I think he had to soak in the tub every night for several days just to be able to get that duct tape off. So, like I say, always something going on, something crazy happening, but man, we had a lot of fun doing it. All right, so this story happened at a daytime race that we were at. Um, it started raining, thundering, and lightning. And wasn't raining that hard, but the thunder and lightning was pretty bad. And a friend of mine, his family had a Chinook that they'd bring to the races. So they're all in the Chinook because of thunder and lightning, and they asked me, said, "Well, you wanna get in here with us?" And I said, "No, it's not raining that hard. I'll just hunker down back here behind the door of it, and try not to get too wet." About that time, lightning struck. Didn't know at the time where it hit at, but scared me to death. I jumped up, grabbed that door to that Chinook, went inside and slammed it shut and said, "Yep, it's a little too much lightning out there for me." We later found out that the lightning actually hit a tree just on the other side of the racetrack where the grandstand was at. And that lightning hit that tree, ran down the tree, across the track, and hit the metal bleachers. And there was a guy that was sitting on the metal bleachers. And from what we were told, it actually knocked him off the metal bleachers. And he was up on the top, so he was probably a good 10, 12 feet off the ground. And they said that it actually knocked him completely off the grandstand. I know they did put him in an ambulance and leave with him. So that turned out to be a kind of a bad thing, but at least he did survive and wasn't hurt too bad. Matter of fact, I think they may have even brought him back to the races after they took him and had him checked out at the hospital. So again, always something going on. All right, so last story here with our videos of reminiscing today. Again, still going to be about motocross, but this one is about something else that happened to me while I was racing. So we come out of the first turn one night and just came out of the gate, went in the first turn, come out. You went up this small hill and you get a big jump right in front of the grandstand. Now, this jump normally would throw you out probably 20 feet from the top of the jump. So I'm in like maybe second or third place when we hit that jump. And the only thing I really remember is looking down and seeing the dirt where everybody else had been hitting when they came off the jump. Because where they would hit, it would kind of be a darker colored dirt than what it was all around it. So I'm still in the air at this point. So I know I've jumped way further than I probably should have. Next thing you know, motorcycle hits the ground, shocks bottom out, front and back, and I'm just basically knocked off the motorcycle backward. I land with my legs straight out, my butt hits the ground, and for whatever reason, something that was taught to me in school back years and years before was if you ever like rolling down a hill or something like that, go limp. Let your body go limp and you'll have less of a chance of breaking something. Why that came to me at that particular point in time, I don't know. But that's what I did. So I let the body just go limp. Well, the next thing I know, I start just turning flips. And every time that I would turn a flip, I had one of the long visors on my motorcycle helmet. Well, that visor would scoop up a scoop full of dirt and then throw it right in my face. And I don't know how many times that I turned flips going down the track. But so I finally get stopped, and three or four people have run down to the track and helped get me up, helped get the motorcycle up. And so one guy's standing there holding the motorcycle. Of course, my mother has made it down there by then. Now, you got to remember, I'm probably maybe 16, 17 years old at this point. So the guy holding the motorcycle, he says, "Well, is he going to get back on it?" My mother says, "No, he's not getting back on it. Take it to the pits." Now, the only thing that I really remember is that I looked down at my shirt and I had just been sponsored by a cycle center, and I had just gotten this new shirt, had my name on it, had the Suzuki shop's name on it, everything. And I look down and see that I have ripped my shirt from basically the shoulder to the elbow. And the only thing that I remember saying is, tore my damn shirt. Of course, after that, they took me back to the pits and set me down. And later on, the guy that had took the motorcycle to the pits, he was telling me about the wreck and how everything had happened. And he says, "I'll tell you what," he said, "when they got you up, you're probably one of the dirtiest humans I've ever seen in my life." From where that helmet had been throwing scoops of dirt in my face every time I turned a flip. So obviously, I didn't finish racing that night. Took me a good while just to get back to know where I was at and what I was doing, but never finished that race. Well, y'all, that's going to do it for the motocross reminiscing for today. Hopefully, it'll be pretty and sunshiny out tomorrow, and maybe we can get out on the back porch and do a little cooking. I've got some andouille sausage and some cabbage, and I want to show y'all a recipe that my mother used to make. It's a fried cabbage and sausage recipe. Man, is it good! So hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to get that done. Maybe get that video up in a few days, and give y'all a cooking video this week as well as a reminiscent video. Hope y'all have enjoyed my stories about motocross days. And I do always tell everybody this was going on back when I was young and stupid. And, that's, you do a lot of things when you're younger and you think you're invincible. But, so anyway, if y'all would again, remember, like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. Help us grow the channel and get those notifications when we post a new video. Hope y'all have enjoyed it and have a good day.